Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show. Home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros.
Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show action edition, where today we feature an item in the news. And I'm here with my old buddy Larry. Larry, what's going on, man? You know, I ran across an article on some people doing a house reno. And saw what they, it's kind of interesting stuff that they found. And I know that from the past, you were telling me about a house that you were working on, and we've talked about things, before of what we found in the walls and things over time. But
Yep.
Why don't you tell us what you found?
Well, yeah. So I was doing a house. This is quite a number of years ago, but it was an older house, older home. It actually was a one-room schoolhouse at one time. Not that matters, but they had renoed this thing, and so I actually was taking down some of the walls, and they, believe it or not, use masonite for the walls, whatever, which is, folks, is paperboard, like what a fire trap. But it gets better. I open up the walls, and inside the walls, the house was built probably in 1880, something like that. Anyway, in one of their renos, which I know happened in 1927, I found newspapers, and I mean not one or two, but they were all crinkled up. This is what they used for insulation. They put newspapers in. These newspapers were actually in good enough shape that I could very carefully unfold them and actually could read the newspapers. So I was reading news articles from 1927, and by the way, a can of beans cost 3.5 cents. So I don't know how you get a half a penny, but anyway, that was really interesting because all the ads were there, and mostly it was a local paper of where I was, and this was in Western New York. So it was the local paper, but it was all dated from 1927. And so, John, we were talking about, you found this article, and I'm going to let you take it away from here.
Well, I was going to say that, if you're doing a house reno, you're going to have to start to, tear stuff apart, renovation, or you start to open up the walls. Well, there's an article, and it came out of New York, and the guy's name that wrote it is George Silverali, I think it is. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right.
We'll post that. So
anyways, this is in Ames, New York, and you know where Ames is, don't you?
Not
it's
really.
In the middle. That's in the middle of nowhere, New York.
Oh, okay.
Way up there.
Yep.
So these people bought a house that they were going to renovate, and they started to tear it apart, and they found kind of an interesting little hatch underneath one of the floors, and thought really nothing of it, but kind of went down into the crawl space. When they got down into the crawl space, and they looked up, well, you expect to see the floorboards and the rafters underneath there, and it was just a big sheet of wood underneath there.
Really?
Like another floor. Yeah, right, another floor. So they got in there, and they had, of course, take that apart, and out came the guy's stash of whiskey. And
really?
And it was a kind of a famous guy up there at the time, and this was in the 20s. He was a bootlegger. Okay,
they got his stash.
And he got his stash, and it was, I think they pulled out 60 bottles of this whiskey, and they haven't even opened it up yet. They're thinking about selling some of it. It's in perfect shape. It was all wrapped in straw, which was really interesting, So, like it was going to go anywhere in the floor. But it was a famous story around town. Nobody knew exactly, basically the house that the guy had it hidden in. And the guy's name was Count. Of course, he had to be a count back then. Count Adolf Humpfner. And and it was a famous guy back then. They just didn't know. They knew that the rumor was that somebody had the house that had the stash in it, and then these people finally found it after all these years, and all the bottles, I think, were marked like 1923, and
right in the middle of Prohibition, right?
Yeah,
right in the middle of Prohibition.
Right.
Wow.
And they just and so he was kind of known as a mysterious German immigrant who owned a house. And up there in New York,
and there you go.
Funny is, Well, it's a bootlegger, right? So, the story is that the guy died under suspicious circumstances in 1932 and collapsed suddenly in his home's living room with just one witness. Usually that's, right there's the tip, right? Usually that's how it happens, right?
Yeah, there's just one witness.
Sounds like it was a hit. There's only one witness. Now, who that? I don't know. But
yeah, the guy with the gun, right? Yeah, there's just one witness, the guy with the gun.
Yeah, he collapsed, in the living room.
So John, I have a question for you. Do you know where the term bootlegging comes from?
I do, and there are varieties of where that came from, but...
Well, so the first known use was in the Midwest, and it was denoted to the practice of concealing flasks of liquor in your boot tops while trading with Native Americans. So that's the AKA bootlegger, right? So
wow, I mean, you talk about some strange things that are lurking behind some of the walls. Just kind of makes you wonder.
It just makes you wonder. So, folks, don't forget to join our Facebook group at Handyman Pros. Send us an email, questions at handymanprosradioshow.com. You can go to our homepage. You can leave us a voice message. You can join us on Twitter. That's at Handyman Radio. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you all next week. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.